We're happy to have the opportunity to share some ministry activities. And my name's Kim, and I work with mission projects all over the world with an organization called Outpost Centers International. And when we think of ministry or we think of sharing the love of Christ, for me, I think of specific experiences of how that's happened in the lives of people that I know and in my own life. And when I think of one special experience is in Zambia, we were invited to go out into a distant village because of a famine. Hadn't had any rains. In Zambia where we live, it doesn't rain for 7 months at a time. And when the 7 months are over, when the rains don't come, or they don't come in enough abundance, then people's corn doesn't grow, which is their staple food, and their other vegetables don't grow. And so famine devastates the area. And in a region not far from us, this has happened. And so we went out with corn and other food supplies to this area, and we started to distribute food. And the idea was I left a whole bunch of bags of corn with the fellow there, and then he was to sell it and pay me for it. And it didn't take me long to realize that keeping track of the money was not going to be easy, and that things got confused financially, and it ended up as an expense. But the good part of that experience was we learned to come close to the people and to see their needs, and they appealed to us, please come out here and start a training program and put in some gardens and grow some food and teach us how to grow better food. And so we responded to that need, and we went out and started a school called Lushomo Christian Institute. And as we served in that area, as we built buildings, as we had young people come for training, it was a real blessing to see the community be encouraged and uplifted. We had a director there named Sylvester Tembo. Tembo means elephant in the local language. And Tembo had been one of our students and then one of our staff at Riverside, and he grew to the point where we felt he could lead this project. And so he was out there in his first rainy season. When the rains finally came, we needed to plow the whole area so we could plant a large crop of maize, corn. And so he wanted to hire a man to plow the field with his oxen. But he wanted to use the plow that we had for the Institute. But the man wanted to use his plow. And that plow wasn't a good plow, and it didn't look like it would last. And Tembo said, well, I'd rather just pay you for the oxen and you use our plow. But the man insisted to use his own plow. And Tembo said, okay, well, if you use your plow and it breaks, then we'll pay you one price, because then you can finish your job with our plow. But, if you use our plow, it's one price. If you use your plow and it breaks, it's another price. I'm not going to pay you for your plow if it breaks, because then you're going to use our plow. And the guy said, okay, he agreed. And sure enough, within the first few hours, he started plowing with his old plow, and you know what happened? It broke. So then the rest of the week, he plowed with the plow that the project had. And when it came time to get paid, Tembo paid him what he had said. If your plow breaks and you have to use our plow, this is what I'm going to give you. But what did the guy want? Yeah, he wanted the complete amount of money like he was using his plow. And Tembo wouldn't move. Tembo said, no, listen, man, this is the agreement we made. This is what we did. And that man was very, very angry. He was just angry as could be, and Tembo would not budge. He says, no, we made an agreement, and we're going to stick to it. And this guy went around, and he spread rumors in the whole district about Tembo and about Lushomo and how bad a place it was. And Lushomo's nestled in this little valley, and he would be up on the hilltop walking along, and he would shout curses down on Tembo. Just hated him, and he was an annoyance for months. He was an annoyance. And so, Tembo shared that with me, and it was a problem, and he didn't know how to solve it. Well, after about 6 months, this man fell ill. And they didn't see him walking around or shouting or being upset. And the students started to go out to the villages surrounding the school to do ministry. And they would go and they would help people with their health problems. Someone gets, a wound, gets burned, whatever it was, the students would go and do hydrotherapy and put on charcoal poultices and administer the simple remedies that they'd been learning. And so they finally got to this man's village and he wasn't around. So they asked about him. And they said, oh, no, he's sick. He's sick. Yeah, he's very sick. He's in the hut over there. And they said, well, maybe we should try to help him. No, he's dead already. He's dead already. We're just waiting. In a few days, he's finished. And they said, no, we need to help him. And when they went in, this man had been sick for weeks. He had a very terrible sore on his behind. The people would come, give him a little food, and leave him there. They didn't wash him. They didn't help him. Nothing. In that little hut, mud hut they had him in, when they went in, it just smelled horrible. And so they went to Tembo, and they told him, look at this. This is the condition of this guy. And Tembo, the leader of that ministry, he instantly went to that man. And his own family was saying, hey, don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. He's finished. He's going to die. He hates you anyway. And Tembo said, no, we're going to help this man. And he went in, and amazingly enough, the stench, the filth, the ugliness of that wound, he bathed the man thoroughly, cleaned the wound, got the pus out, made a poultice, put bandages. The next day he came back. After 3 days, the man was strong enough to where he could eat. The pain was gone, the infection was starting to go down, and he was able to start eating food. And every day, Tembo and the students would bring this man food. And within 2 weeks, the man was recovered. And he wasn't even close to, he's restored to good health. And here we have an example, that do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Jesus said, love your enemies. And it was a thrill to see this happen and to see the transformation that someone that had rained curses down on Tembo and just spread, terrible, terrible rumors about Tembo and about the ministry all around the district. Tembo, through the grace of God, was able to not just help the man, but to literally save his life. And for everyone in the district knew the story that I just told you. And they couldn't believe that Tembo would be willing to go in and to perform such an unpalatable service that the man's own family wasn't willing to perform to save this guy's life. His own family didn't feel he was worth the time, worth the investment, worth the trouble. Just let him die. And so that did, as you could imagine, that did a wonderful work for the ministry that we had there. And it spoke to the hearts of the people that were around there. And when I think of that story, and Tembo still, he's now leading out with our educational program up in Tanzania at a place called Kibidula Farm. He's training young people to do ministry and evangelism and Bible work. And yet, more than the class work that we teach, it's the heart work. And when you have the privilege to work with men whose hearts have been touched by the love of God like this, it's just a thrill to see it go forward. And in every experience that we have, God gives us opportunity. I tell you about when we started Kibidula Farm up in Tanzania. It's a 2.5-day drive from Zambia, where we're living, through the African bush, through Malawi and Tanzania up to Kibidula. And there's a unspoken game that's played at all border posts. And that game is for you to try to keep as much money in your pocket and for them to get as much money out of your pocket as they can, okay? That's the game. That's how it works. And it's just a normal process that you go through. So I'm at the border with Malawi and Tanzania, and I've checked out of Malawi, and I'm now at the Tanzanian border, and I get in there, and the game begins, okay? You have to declare how much money you have. Now, I have Malawi kwacha because I was just in Malawi. And Malawi kwacha you can only use in Malawi. You can't use them nowhere else, and no other country in the world will use Zambian kwacha, Tanzania shillings, Malawi kwacha. Those currencies are only good for that country. Okay, so I have maybe several hundred Malawi kwacha. And the customs officer says, well, you're leaving Malawi. So you can just leave those Malawian kwacha here because you can't use them in Tanzania. I said, well, that's true, but I'll be back. I'll be back in a month or two, and I'll use them. Then he sees how many US dollars I have. He says, well, maybe you should just leave some of the US dollars here. And I said, no, I'm not leaving any of my US dollars here. I need these to do the work that I'm going to do. And he says, well, it's very hot here, and we need a cold drink. It would be nice. Okay, no. Guys, let's just do our business. Okay, I'm not buying everybody cold drinks. And it gets down to my pen, to where he wants my pen. I said, listen, I'm not giving you my Malawi kwacha. I'm not giving you my US dollars. I'm not buying you cold drinks, and I'm not giving you my pen. But when we're done here, I have something for everybody. It has nothing to do with our business here. Our business here, let's complete, and we'll go out to the truck, and I have something for you. But it has nothing to do with what we do here. Okay. So we get out to my truck, and I always carried cases of books and Signs of the Time magazines. Okay, so I had Patriarchs and Prophets, Desire of Ages, Great Controversy, Christ Object Lessons. I had all these books, and I opened up the boxes of books, and I said, you may choose a book. And so this guy grabs a book, the guy that's been the hardest on me, just squeezing me, he picks up the Great Controversy, he looks at it, he says, do you have the book Messages to Young People? And I said, what? He says, do you have the book Messages to Young People? I said, how in the world did you know that book? Oh, this is my church. This is my church. And I'm thinking to myself, this is your church? I'm going to wring your neck. We've been in here. You've been, squeezing me for a bribe. And now you have the capacity to stand here and tell me, this is your church. He saw the name Ellen White. He knew Ellen White wrote the book Messages to the Young People. And I restrained myself. I didn't tell him the reaction I just told you, okay? And, but I thought, oh, this is terrible. This is not good. But what happened, there was an immigration officer there named Frank, and he took the book, The Great Controversy. And they all got books, and I went on my way. About 2.5 months later, one of our staff members named Mary, I mentioned her the other day, and as I was sharing about the man with this horse, Mary's home village was down here at this border post. And she went home to see her family. And while she was there, she went to church on Sabbath. And when she came back to Kibidula, a few weeks later, in church, she got up and shared a testimony. She says, I was down at my home village, down by Lake Malawi, and in church, this guy got up from the border post. He was an immigration officer, and he said, about 2.5 months ago, this white guy came through the border, and he got this book, The Great Controversy. And he read the book, and he studied his Bible, and he read the book, and he studied his Bible, and he became convinced of the truth that was in this book. And then he said he went to his pastor, because he was a Christian, and he started to labor with his pastor. And at first the pastor argued with him. And finally, the pastor said, Frank, if you study with the Seventh-day Adventists, you're going to become one. Because the Seventh-day Adventists follow the Bible. And if you keep studying, everything they say in that book is true. He says, well, if that's what's going to happen, I'm going to become a Seventh-day Adventist. Why don't you become a Seventh-day Adventist? And the pastor said, well, I'll lose my job and I'll lose my paycheck. And so Frank had been one of those guys that got the book, I was thrilled. I was thrilled. Here he found his way. So I go back to Zambia about 1.5 months later, and I go through the same border post, and I meet Frank. He's at work, and he stamps my passport, and we get talking, and I give him another book, Christ Object Lessons or Desire of Ages. I don't remember which one I gave him. But I said, you get this, you read it. When I come back, I'll bring you another book. So 3 months later, I come back to the same border post, and I find Frank, and I said, Frank, how's it going? He says, do you know the Seventh-day Adventist Church has been here for almost 100 years? There's been Seventh-day Adventists in this community for almost 100 years, and they've never built a church. That is not right. We've been here. We need to have a memorial for God. We need to have a church, a Seventh-day Adventist church here. And I said, praise the Lord, man. You get the guys to make the bricks, and I will come with the roofing sheets. And so sure enough, he organized to have the bricks made, and we brought the roofing sheets, and we finally had a Seventh-day Adventist church there. As I would go, he would say, I'd ask him how he's doing. And one day I said, hey, Frank, how's it going? As I was going or coming through the border post. He says, it's not good. He says, since I became an Adventist and I've been studying, he says, it's wrong to take bribes from people. We shouldn't be using our position here to get bribes from people. And I said, that's right, man. Praise the Lord. I'm glad you feel that way. He says, yeah, but I stopped taking bribes, and my friends, they're not happy with me, meaning his fellow workers. And they were really persecuting him. They were giving him a hard time. And then a couple weeks later, I'm back. I said, are things any better? He says, no, they're worse. He says, because I am the chief immigration officer. And now I know I can't allow any of my men to take bribes while I'm in charge, while I'm on duty. And so he forbid them to be taking bribes. And they're angry because you get that job, so you can get bribes. Okay? The government doesn't send you a paycheck maybe once in 9 months. The people going back and forth through the border, they're the ones that give you a paycheck. And so I had a plan in mind, but I didn't want to tell Frank what it was, because he started talking about quitting and maybe doing something else. He had a burden to share Christ and to do Bible work. And finally, my next trip through, Frank says, I've turned in my resignation. I'm quitting. I'm not staying in this job. I want to go where I can serve God. And I said, Frank, now that you've made that decision, I want to invite you to Kibidula to come and join our staff. And that's exactly what happened. He came and he joined our staff at Kibidula, and he became in charge of evangelism. And he was going all over the district holding evangelistic meetings. And it was just a thrill to see his Christian life grow and change. And it all came from reading a book. Okay? And it just transformed his life and of his family and got him into a life of ministry. And he was able to leave a place that was very corrupt and built on corruption to go off and serve the Lord. So it's things like this that just give inspiration and warm your heart to see God working. One last thought was we started a project in Madagascar, which is the third largest island in the world. It's out in the Indian Ocean, right off the east coast of Africa. And to get there, you have to go through Nairobi. And while I'm in Nairobi, you have to get your visa. You have work you have to do. And so I would stay at the Adventist guest house, and then I would hire a taxi to take me around Nairobi. And I found a taxi driver. His name was David. And I said, David, stay with me. Take me where I need to go, and I'll pay you. And I always, again, had signs to the Times magazines. I had, books with me. And so as he would wait for me, I'd give him literature to read. And so each time I would come into Nairobi, I would find him, and I would use him to take me to the Air Madagascar and to go get my visa and to the U.S. Embassy. And we became friends. And so one day I showed up, and I'm looking for David at the taxi stand, and he's not around. And I'm explaining to the other taxi drivers who I'm looking for and the color of the car. And finally they say, oh, the pastor, you want the pastor. And I thought, oh, this is great. So finally I wait for the pastor, and sure enough, it's David. And he had started to minister to his fellow taxi drivers. So we went to the Adventist Book Center in Nairobi. We bought Bibles. We bought, books in Swahili and loaded him up so he would have this literature to give out. Well, long story short, he becomes convicted of the truth he's reading. He gets baptized. A year later, his wife gets baptized. They start a branch Sabbath school, back in their home village, and we built a church there for him. And he became that light in that community. And this went on for about 3 years, that we would meet on a regular basis as I was passing through Nairobi. And then one time I came, and I was looking for David, and I learned that he had died. and that, he wouldn't be available for taking me around or us working together in ministry anymore. But again, God used literature to open the heart, the mind of somebody, and then the influence he had, only time and eternity will tell us. Good. All right, we'll go to Mongolia just briefly. Some of you may know where Mongolia is. It's up by Siberia. And several years ago, we had the privilege to go in and to build the first Seventh-day Adventist church in Mongolia. My son, my nephew, and we got them launched. And it was a thrilling experience. The church is very young in Mongolia, both in terms of age and in terms of years. And after we built that first church, several years later, we were able to go back to that church, back to Mongolia. And unlike in Africa, when you go out into a village or wherever you are, you quickly make friends with people. They smile very readily. They're happy to see you. They give you a little stool. You sit down, and you have a very pleasant experience, usually very quickly. In Mongolia, the Mongolians don't like foreigners. They don't like people from outside. They've been treated very poorly by the Russians, poorly by the Chinese. They don't trust foreigners. And you may remember Mongolia was a mighty nation. It was the largest kingdom the world has ever known. The Mongolian kingdom had the greatest geographical area of any empire in the world. And so there was this barrier. And as we were up to start building the second church in Mongolia, in a city of about 40,000 people, we felt this resistance. And one Sabbath afternoon, we went off to the local hospital, and we went into the children's ward. And as many children as were able came out for a visit. And we played the guitar, and we sang songs, and we played games. And people were all around watching what was happening and watching the feelings of the children become happy and cheerful, and we had gifts. And the children that couldn't come out, my wife and I went in, and we shared some presents that we'd brought with us to the children that were in their beds and weren't well enough to come out in the sunshine. And then we went back out. And at the end of about 2.5 hours, the eldest man in that group of adults that was carefully watching what we were doing, he came to me, probably because I was the oldest foreigner. And he said to me, we don't like foreigners in Mongolia. And I thought, yeah, I got that message, but I didn't. I didn't say that. I just nodded my head. He says, but you people, you came here today, and you made our children happy. You made them forget that they were sick. And you put smiles on their faces, and you sang to them, and you played games with them, and you gave them gifts. And I want you to know that you people are welcome here anytime. And that was the greatest reward that we could have received, is to see those barriers be broken down, to see the hearts of the children, the happiness on their faces, and to see the adults respond and start to have a relationship of trust and appreciation. And that's where it begins. We've read earlier together, Christ's methods alone would give true success in reaching the people. He mingled with them as one who desired their good. He ministered to their needs. He showed his sympathy for them, and he won their confidence. And anywhere in the world we go, if we will follow that, we will see these types of experiences. As we close, let's just have a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we want to pause again before you and to thank you for your goodness. We thank you that you have a great love for each person in this world, no matter where they live, no matter what their circumstances are. Your great desire is that they would hear the message of your kindness, of your goodness, and that they would have a taste and appreciation for the love that you have for them. And so we ask that you will work in our lives, that you will make us a blessing to others in this world, that we might be a channel of your kindness and your grace to be extended to those that are perishing. And we thank you for answering us, not because we're worthy, but because we have a great need. In Jesus' name, amen.